Typically, the terms cheap and RC don't really go together. I've been kind of playing around or dabbling with RC stuff for quite a while, several years, and it's definitely not a poor man's hobby, and I'm definitely not a rich man. So whenever I get an opportunity to throw something together for cheap, I kind of jump on it. So the first step in building a cheap RC anything is to have somebody give you half of it. I know what you're thinking, but just hear me out on this. If you're into RC stuff, or anything for that matter, if you've been into it for a while, probably all of your friends and family and people you meet or whatever are going to find out that you're into it, and eventually people are going to give you stuff. Usually it's the junk they don't want, but it's stuff that we can make useful. And over the years, I've had several people just offer me all kinds of stuff: RC helicopters, planes, cars, model kits, or whatever. And I always offer to pay them. I'm not a complete mooch, but they'll say, hey, I don't want this, you can have it. And I'll offer them, I'll say, I'll pay you something, I'll give you, what do you want for it? And every time they don't want my money. And I try to turn it around too. If I have something I just honestly don't have a use for and I see that somebody else does, I'll give it to them. And if they offer to pay me, I gladly accept. That was a joke. So starting with this, my neighbor across the street, who also does some RC stuff, a friend of his had the car, and his friend totaled it, took all the parts off he didn't want, and then gave my friend basically the chassis, and that was it. And he kind of hung on to it for a while and decided he didn't want anything to do with it. So he brought it over to me and said, you want this? And I said, sure. So what he ended up giving me was not everything you see here. It was basically just the chassis. It was this part, the suspension, the front and rear differentials, and that was it. No wheels, no tires, no electronics, no nothing. And I threw it in a corner of my garage and stared at it every time I came in here for a few months, and I finally decided to try to do something with it. Now, since I was given the chassis, and like I said, I can't really justify throwing a bunch of cash at this thing. I set a goal. I was going to try to get this thing running for less than $100. And if I would have made some better decisions, I probably could have done it. So the first thing I did was wheels and tires. So these wheels and tires are all 3D printed. So basically the cost of that was just the cost of the materials. The wheels, I can't take credit for the wheels. I downloaded those from Thingiverse, and you can get those from Thingiverse right here. Now I did modify the wheels a little bit. I shortened them. They were quite a bit wider. They were probably that wide originally, so I narrowed them down a bit. And I also modified around the side to take the tire that I designed. This is my design of a tire. I spent all of about 10 minutes coming up with a tread pattern and designing this, and printed it in flexible material, Ninja Flex. Actually, it's not Ninja Flex, it's different flexible material, but it's pretty much the same thing. And you can download my modified wheel and tire together. You could get those from Thingiverse, and you can see those here. Now, in order for the tires to print, the wheel is pretty straightforward. The wheel don't print with support. There is a support piece that's built into the file, so after it prints, you just break that off, and then you finish drilling the hole in the middle. The hole is started, you just finish drilling through. And that was the way it was originally designed from the original guy who designed these wheels. The tires, again, do not print support. I would recommend maybe, I think I did 3 perimeters and 3 tops and 3 bottoms with no support, and I think I did about a 5% infill, and that gives you a fairly squishy tire. I wish I would have done maybe 4 perimeters, and maybe a 10 to 15% infill maybe. But these are fine. They came out okay. They'll work. And of course, you just super glue them to the wheel, which is pretty common. So again, wheels and tires, if you have a 3D printer, cost of materials there. Otherwise, you can get wheels and tires off eBay for fairly cheap. At my local hobby shop, they were way more expensive than I ever would have thought they would have been. So hopefully these 3D printed parts hold up. If not, I'll probably just buy some cheap ones off of eBay. All right, now, the motor I just have a box full of motors that I've accumulated over the years. This is a 27 turn, man, I don't even know what it is, Epic binary something. It's an older motor. The speed controller, I got that from eBay for really cheap. It was like 15 bucks. And I have learned the hard way many times to be careful with cheap RC electronics from eBay. I think this is a Quick Run. Yeah, Quick Run 1060. Again, about $15. It seems to work. I have not road tested the car yet. I just turned it on and powered it up, and it seems to work. But I'm under the impression that this setup is going to be fairly slow. So if I'm not happy with the way it runs, then I'll probably just change that all out for brushless. Now, I did get some advice from the guys at my local hobby shop. They said to find somebody who bought a Traxxas, a 1/10 Traxxas, who upgraded to brushless, because that comes with a 12-turn brush motor and ESC, and guys are typically selling those for about 40 bucks for the set, approximately. I'm sure you can get them cheaper or more expensive. But I'm thinking if I'm going to spend 40 bucks for a setup here, I'll just spend a few more dollars and go brushless, because you can get some cheaper brushless stuff on eBay. And again, like I said, you got to be careful what you pay for. I mean, you got to be careful with what you get on eBay, because some of the cheap stuff is just that. It's cheap crap. And for example, I got a speed controller, not for this car, but for a different one. I paid 10 bucks for it. And after the car went about 10 bucks across my front yard, all the smoke started pouring out of the unit. And so I guess, yeah, it ran for 10 feet, fried itself. So I guess $10 for 10 feet, $1 a foot. I don't know. What's the going rate per foot these days? I don't know. So, but I contacted the seller, told him what happened, and he refunded my money. So at least you do have some buyer's protection through eBay and PayPal and all of that. So I'm curious to see how long this speed controller lasts and how well the speed controller motor setup works, how fast the car is. By the way, this will be probably a 2-part video. This first part is just showing you what I've done up to this point. After I finish the body work, and I'll do another video of it finished and driving around and show you guys how it goes. And if it sucks, I'll put brushless on it, and then I'll do a 3rd video showing with the brushless setup. The servo. The servo, this one came from my local hobby shop. It was their more affordable option. That servo, I'm trying to see if I can see the brand name on that. I don't, something, is that Tower? I don't even remember. It was $16 or $17 for that servo. I actually bought a different servo on eBay for about $12. It worked, but it seemed a little bit underpowered. So when I saw this one at the hobby shop for $17, and I asked the guys about it, and they said that it is a good servo for the money, got plenty of torque. Again, it's not a high-tech servo. It's not perfect, but again, keep in mind, I'm building this car for my son and I to just play around with in the backyard or take it to the park or something like that. I'm not going to be racing anybody with this thing. I don't care about having top-of-the-line equipment. That's one reason I'm going cheap stuff. I can't justify paying a ton of money for something I'm just going to be playing around with in the front yard. So I could have saved 12 bucks by not buying the servo on eBay and just buying this one at the hobby shop. The radio. The receiver here. Take a look at the receiver. This came from eBay, and it just says there's no brand name on it. That's the receiver. It's a 4-channel receiver. And the transmitter, get the transmitter in view here. Here's the transmitter, Exceed RC. I have no idea if this is who makes it. I mean, I'm sure China makes it. But it has everything I need. You've got, well, obviously on and off. You've got your dual rate for steering, dual rate for throttle. You got reverse and forward for throttle. You got your trim for throttle and steering here. Of course, normal setup here. This was it was advertised as a refurbished unit on eBay. It was $19. And as far as I can tell, it works perfectly fine. And for 19 bucks, I mean, come on. So, so far, cost-wise, like I said, 19 for the radio, 15 for the receiver, say 16 for the servo. So that's what? Yeah, it's way too late in the day to do math in my head, but I'm still well under my $100 budget that I had set up for myself. Now, the chassis that my friend gave me did not include this top piece here. Get a better view of that. This is a carbon fiber top support brace, top plate, whatever you want to call it. I made this myself. I have carbon fiber material and I have the epoxies. The way I did this was I took a piece of clear, thin plastic and I set it on top and used that to make a template. I could locate all of the holes and draw the shape that I wanted. And then I laid out about 5 layers of carbon fiber on a sheet of plexiglass that I had put a release agent on. And once it cured, popped it off, trimmed it to shape, drilled the holes, and put it on. The only difficult part was this area right here that goes over top of the gear. And basically to do that, when I laid out the carbon fiber, I carved a piece of foam to the correct shape and I taped that down onto the plexiglass and I just formed the carbon fiber right over top of that. Didn't do, this is just a scrap piece I glued on there for a little bit of extra strength, but I didn't really even need to do that. No vacuum bagging or anything, I just laid it in place. To go over tight corners like that, you want to make sure that your carbon fiber ply bias is at about a 45-degree angle, and then it lays in a lot nicer and will work a lot better for you. At the hobby shop, I bought the drive shaft, which probably was a mistake because that drive shaft I think was $12. And it's just a simple aluminum tube with some pins on it. I could have made that here. I've got the material, I've got the tools. I could have saved 12 bucks and made that here. The front differential, and you know what, let me grab a flashlight real quick because the lighting here. If we take a look towards the front, yeah, these stupid flashlights. See, that's what happens when you buy cheap stuff. Things just stop working. There you go. So right down in there, can you see it? The forward cup. Get the light on there, right? Man, come on. It'd be nice if I was prepared. So the forward cup came with the car. The rear cup did not. So I guess we should be looking at that a little bit better. So I made the rear cup. Fortunately, the hobby shop did not have one. And I say fortunately because if they did have one, I would have bought it for probably 10 bucks. And I was able to make that here on my lathe for nothing. Basically, you just drill through, and let me see if I can turn that around so you can see. You drill out the center to the right diameter, you cut a slot in it, you drill a hole in the side and thread it for a set screw. We can see right in there, come on, right there. And there you have it. I think it took me all of half an hour to make that thing, and it works perfect. It fits better than the forward cup. That other piece there that the bearing goes through and that those top screws go into, I don't know what the name is, but that's what the motor mounts on. Maybe that's what it's called, the motor mount. I don't know. That I had to buy on eBay, and I really got lucky with that one because I have no idea who makes this chassis. I'm sure it's a cheap off-brand. It's not Traxxas or anything like that. So I went on eBay and I just did a search for 1/10 RC car motor mount. And after looking at 100 pictures, I finally found a picture one that looked like it should fit. I bought it for $8, and what do you know? It fit. So I kind of got lucky with that one. Other than that, that brings us up to where we are here. And now first thing I did actually was clean the whole thing up, cleaned all the dirt and grease and grime off of it. I took the differentials apart and re-lubed everything there. I resurfaced the oil and the shocks. Probably didn't need to do that, but I did. And that pretty much, I think, covers us for this. So if we look at the body I'm planning on putting on this is a Volkswagen Baja body. This is the Tamiya body kit, and obviously I had to cut into here to make room for the front shocks. And since I had to cut into there, that cut into, you can see the indent in the hood, it cut into that indent. So I added some plastic stock to bring that indent back up into here, if that makes any sense. I think that looks better than just having that cut into the indentation of the hood. I think it does anyways. This has just got a light coat of primer on it. And I told my son, or I asked my son, I said, how should we paint this? What color should we paint this? He thought about it for a little bit. My son's only 10, by the way. And he suggested, see, I think that'll look pretty cool. He suggested orange with a white stripe, or a pair of white stripes. And yeah, so he suggested orange and a pair of white stripes going across it. And I thought that sounded like a good idea. I liked that. Now, I was imagining a metallic orange. We went to the hobby shop to pick out the paint, and they were all out of metallic orange. They were all out of any orange that I thought would have looked good. And he picked up a can of fluorescent orange, and he said, this. I'm like, are you sure? He goes, yeah, this. I'm like, okay. So I'm going to paint this fluorescent orange after I finish up a little bit of bodywork. And I'll put probably a pearl white stripe down the front. Or maybe like an antique white or something like that. I'll play around with that a little bit. And then I got to figure out how to mount the body on here. So I'm still working on that. I'm still planning on that. And one more thing I'm going to add to this is a fake engine. Now this is a 3D printed fake Volkswagen engine. This was actually drawn for I think the Tamiya RC buggy. And you can get the file to print this on Thingiverse. You can see that here. And it looks okay. I'm not too thrilled about the painting that I did on it. I basically just did brush painting. Nothing too crazy, nothing too special with it. And of course that will go right back in here. I will more than likely bond that into the body. That'll set in there about like that. So this will probably, get this out of the way, permanently attach right in here. And then I gotta, again, figure out how to mount the body onto the car. This print, just to give you a heads up, if you do print this, there is a ton of some support material that prints with this. And it was a pain in the rear to get all that support material out. I actually broke off the pulley and belt assembly in order to get the support material out, which ended up being fine because it made it a whole lot easier to paint it and get the rest of the support out. There's a ton of support material all in here, so just be prepared to have to dig out, cut out, grind out all the support material. You'll probably break pieces and have to reglue them back on, which reminds me, I broke off the actual exhaust tip here, so I'm going to have to reglue on an exhaust tip here. But other than that, this is the guy that drew this did a really great job. There's a lot of great detail in this thing. And I just slapped on a crappy coat of paint on it. But for what it's going to be used for, I'm fine with it. Again, it's just for my son and I to drive around the backyard. Nobody is ever going to see this. So that's it for now. Like I said, once I get the body painted and mounted and the motor, the fake motor, so this is And yeah, I was thinking about putting the some wires in there for the spark plugs. But if I would have done that, somebody would have been like, "Oh, you didn't have the right wire. No, the firing order's off or whatever." And it's like, come on, it's a fake engine. It doesn't really run. It's electric. So I guess it's electric, gas engine, fake gas engine. So what is it, like a fake hybrid maybe? But who cares? Like I said, nobody's going to see this. But anyways, once I get it all done, like I said, I'll do another video showing it complete, showing it running around, driving around. And that's it. So, hope you enjoyed it. And thanks for watching.